Chapter 2 The Hidden Star. The man with the sword on his back walked out into a clearing in the woods. He was unsure what exactly would happen this time around. But as he stepped, he kicked over a rock and didn't pay attention to the insects crawling and scurrying out from underneath it. Instead, he looked up into the sky and stared at the stars. There was many of them as night had passed. As day had passed into night, he could see that there's so many stars in this vast open landscape of sky that he thought to himself, what's making one more? He withdrew his sword and he jumped up into the sky. He jumped far and high, past the kingdoms below, so that anything he saw down there looked like a speck or just an insect itself. Then he took his sword when he reached a high enough elevation, and he swung his sword, and he hit something that he could not see, an electrical invisible barrier that shot him back down to earth. Slowly he pulled himself back up. With a grunt, he looked back at the sky, and he jumped up again to the same position, faster than he did before. He swung his sword again, hit an invisible barrier that shot electricity all through his body and sent him soaring right back down to where he started. And then he brushed himself off, got up again, he jumped again at the same place, swinging his sword and getting flung back down to earth. He did it again, got up, jumped into the sky, swung his sword, and this continued for about 5 minutes until he hesitated to get back up. He pushed himself to his knees and looked up at the sky. Shakingly, he stood to his feet again, readied himself to jump, and then heard a hiss from behind him. Then another hiss from beside him. More hisses. More different sounds were coming out too. The clinking of jugs in a musical rhythm, as if the wind was blowing it. All around him, he could hear the sound, and he could see the smoke rising from the ground. Well, not from the ground, smoke appearing from the woods, pouring out to where he stood in the middle. "You are a stubborn one," he heard the hissing say. He paid it no attention. He jumped into the air, swung his sword, and got flung back down to earth, right in the middle of the vast smoke. "What are you planning to achieve?" he heard the smoke hiss again. "Do you honestly expect this will ever end? I'm not sure what your end game is, even," continued the voice. "All you do is you fight, and you fight, and you fight. I'm not even sure why you do it anymore. Hell, I don't even think you know why you do it anymore." The swordman got up and said, "Shut up. I hate you." At this, the smoking voice laughed and said, that's the thing. I'm not sure you even know why you hate me anymore." The swordman prepared himself to jump, but then hesitated. He thought to himself. "I don't know if this is going to work," he told himself. "I might need a new change of tactics." At this, the smoke laughed. "Change of tactics," he said to what the man thought. He said aloud to what the man thought in his head. "You don't say. All you do is the same thing over and over again. Day in, day out, year in, century, millennia out. What I want to know is, where are you going with this? Honestly, we could be so much more powerful together than apart. Why don't you come with me? Join forces. Be, instead of some wrecking ball that crashes into everything like a bull in a china shop, be part of something bigger. Join me, and we can make order where there is chaos. The man with the sword thought for a second, then sprung up into the air with his sword held high, ready to slash at the same spot. When a vine reached up into the air and grabbed him by his leg, pulled him to the ground, slammed him into the dirt, spun him around, and slammed him into the ground 5 more times. The man eventually slashed the vine off of his foot and stood up and regained his balance. By this time, the smoke had completely surrounded him, and he knew he couldn't jump anymore. The smoke was surrounding him, and he felt some pressure increasing on him in the area he stood. He knew that if he stayed in the same spot, the pressure would increase until he couldn't move anymore. The man ran off into the woods, while the presence followed him. The man was not so easily defeated, though. He jumped up from tree to tree, looking for a clearing from the smoke. But the smoke was thick and vast. He saw some lights in the distance. He heard the clanging of the jars again, and he heard them from his left, right, in all directions. He saw a lantern floating in the air. He saw an image appear and disappear, as if it was transparent and fading in and out of reality. This figure, a woman with long dark hair in a nightgown, walked from in front of him and disappeared behind a tree. Then he heard her giggle from behind. He turned around and saw her disappear behind another tree. He looked in all directions to see her again. He heard her say, "Again, you won't be able to get past my guard this time. You jump in the air, my smoke will pressurize around you and pull you down again. Are we going to keep doing this forever? The two of us, just battling for all eternity? This fight, eternal struggle that will never end, when we both know there are better uses of our time." The man looked around, and he saw it again, the lantern and the woman. He kicked a rock up into the air and struck it with his sword, breaking it in half and sending one half soaring towards her lantern, smashing it open as fire spewed out and caught on one of the trees. The woman shrieked and flew away in pain. The man ran over to where the smoke was, and he jumped up into the tree, climbed it, and reached the top of the tree very quickly. The smoke from the fire of the tree spread out around him, and he controlled it with his mind and forced the woman's smoke away from him. And he jumped up into the sky toward the same spot, swung his sword, got electrocuted, and shot back down towards the earth, into the woods. This time in a completely different position. He heard the woman shrieking. He looked around. He saw there was no smoke around him. Yet. He knew he needed to find a new way to break through this barrier, but he was glad to be away from the smoke again. He ran through the woods, away from the direction of the smoke. He ran and ran until he he was very far away from, till he was, let's say, 3 miles away from where he first started. The forest was thinner here. And he jumped up into the sky again. He swung his sword. This time, he swung and hit his target. He hit the sky and ripped it open. See, this time he swung at whatever this was from behind this barrier. He ripped the sky open, and light poured out of this tear. But he fell into the barrier that was blocking him before. He got electrocuted and flung back. He got flung upwards to hit the top of the barrier, then downwards to hit the bottom. He got flung out of the barrier completely, down into the woods. He got flung into a stream. He got hit, and he hit his head off a rock, and he lay there unconscious. But this gap that he tore in the sky, it opened up like a gaping wound, with light pouring out, gushing and oozing, dripping down into the forest below. Below this light, there was, behind this gash, inside of this gash, there was a great rainbow star of all different colors, swirling in and out of each other. The star shone so brightly that anyone could look up at it and see that a beam of light, of rainbow light, was being pointed down towards the opening in the forest below. This light, some would look out and say, must mean something. Only few, though, really put their heads down to the ground and pondered what exactly.